Good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about sanitation. There are three aspects of sanitation we could consider. One is the management of solid waste. Another is management of wastewater. The one we will look at today is the importance and the management of excreta disposal. Now, safe excreta disposal is important because it limits the spread of excreta-related diseases, usually associated with diarrheal diseases. Uncontrolled defecation can result in a multiplication of contamination points in the surrounding environment, and thus making the likelihood of disease transmission much greater. In certain conditions where we have uncontrolled defecation, we often see that during rainy seasons where heavy rains mobilize a lot of excreta which has been deposited in the surrounding environment, we often see a peak in excreta-related diseases. In terms of structure and strategy for dealing with excreta management and safe excreta disposal, one of the most common techniques that's used or employed is that of use of the pit latrine, which consists largely of a hole in the ground and a facility for depositing excreta. There are a number of different designs and materials that can be used. If we see in the images here, we see three different types of latrine construction. One is in an emergency context with materials such as plastic and metal sheeting with independent or separate facilities. We see another structure which is constructed out of local materials, which is largely of grass and poles, raised up off the ground because of wet conditions on the soil surface, and a more permanent structure where we see the brick latrine with the double-faced doors, and an important facility in terms of hygiene, the hand washing service at the side of the building. Now, if we look at the sketch and the design of the latrine, there are some basic elements that should be common to all latrines, no matter what they are constructed from. One is that the pit should not reach into the water table. Because of the content of the pit latrine, there is an amount of liquid and solid. The liquid moves into the subsurface soil unless the pit latrine is impermeable in its container. And as that liquid moves through, it takes the contamination with it. It slowly cleans itself and purifies itself during this movement, but if it's too close to the water table, it will move into the water table and will contaminate the groundwater. So essentially, one of the regulations to consider in terms of where you're going to put your pit latrine is to make sure that it's not close to any close by groundwater source, such as a hand-dug well. A good rule of thumb has often been to keep 50 meters distance, but in certain geological conditions where the subsoils are actually more consisting of fractured heavy rock, we find that some areas 100 meters is not sufficient. So one must take care and do a good analysis of the situation. In terms of the use of the latrines, because of the personal nature of defecation and defecation management, it's often more easy to encourage the use of latrines at the household level than it is at the public level, such as the marketplace or even public institutions such as schools and clinics. At the household level, we find that the latrines that are pit latrines classic are usually installed outside of the house. Not too close to the house either, but not too far away to prevent access. If we have an inside household latrine system, it may not be a pit latrine, it may be that with flushing from running water, as we can see in this diagram. Another element to consider in the use of latrines is who is going to be using them. Here we see in the diagrams and in the images children using latrines and small pots. In the diagram sketch, we see that there's a small handle for children to hold on to. And this is important for small children because in the adult style and design of latrine, children are not able to position themselves safely over the hole. They lose their balance and they can hurt themselves or fall into the hole. There are other user elements to consider as well, and that's one of gender. We should always consider separate facilities for men and women, and in certain contexts where we're operating, we need to be aware that there are handicapped users as well. So we may need to construct certain latrine facilities with handicap access for wheelchairs or certain handles and structures to accommodate people that may be missing one or two limbs. Another element to consider in the use of the latrine is that of care and maintenance. A facility that is not clean will not be used. It should be regularly cleaned, but also we should look at elements of how the latrine is used. If we look at the images here, we see one where we have defecation on the floor, and this is obviously inappropriate use for whatever reason. And in the second image, we see a latrine that's overflowing, which can be for a number of reasons. One, it can be simply that the facility has reached its maximum capacity and needs to be cleaned, or it has also been misused and maybe materials have been thrown into the pit which are inappropriate either for cleaning or just for disposal of garbage. In terms of care and maintenance, a good facility is one that will be used and will not only prevent diseases but can promote the wider use of the latrine facility, even if it's in the public domain. Here we have two images of good facilities. One which has been regularly cleaned in the interior, the floor is clean, there is no overflowing, and would obviously be a pleasure to use. And in the other image, we have an example of a shared facility, twin pit latrine, but one facility for men, one facility for women, and of very good quality and very clean condition. So in conclusion, what do we need to remember about sanitation? In terms of safe sanitation and management of defecation, we want to make sure that we limit the transmission of sanitation-related diseases. In terms of the users, we want to be user-friendly and user-conscious. We may need to look at elements of facilities specially designed for children, include gender issues, and maybe look at handicapped users as well. Safe installation, not in the water table, not too close to the water points, structurally sound so there are no collapse, well protected. And finally, the care and maintenance of the facility, not just to make them hygienic so that they themselves don't become focal points of transmission, but safe and clean in order to encourage people to use the facility. Thank you.